The million dollar question: how do entrepreneurs transition from self-employed to owning a business that turns a profit? My name is Chris Waters, and this podcast has the million dollar answer. Welcome to CEO Secrets. Okay, I think we're live on Facebook. Yes.
All right.
Cool.
Yes.
So, hey, Brian, it's funny. This is actually my first time to broadcast live on Facebook. Previously, all of my episodes have been recorded. So you're actually my second guest to have on CEO Secrets. So for those of you guys listening in, this is Brian Charlesworth. He's the founder of Sisu. That's SISU.co. I'm actually a customer of Sisu. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But Brian, welcome to CEO Secrets.
Thank you. And thanks for letting me be the first on your Facebook Live.
Yeah, I hope people are watching this. I'm going to actually, so by the way, if you guys are listening to this on iTunes or YouTube, I have a private Facebook group. And so that's where we're actually broadcasting this live right now. And
what is that Facebook group? How do we get into that?
Yeah, so it's called the Chris Waters Rainmaker Alliance. And yep, I see us live. I'm on the Facebook page right now, so it's definitely live. But yeah, so Chris Waters Rainmaker Alliance, and like the reason I don't make it open to the public is because like I just wanted to have like a tight group of people that were focused on building a business. So the people in there like are maybe some of them are real estate agents that are trying to grow teams, but it's not like, there aren't part-time realtors in there. Like they're people like trying to go to the next level. And so, we have about like 800 to 900 members, and these are all people trying to build like mega real estate teams across North America. So anyways, I see us live. So cool. Brian, so I'm so glad we connected. We met at a Inman real estate conference in New York. Was it, a year ago?
New York City. I think that was the Inman from 6 months ago.
Okay, yeah. So 6 months ago at Inman, and what's really fascinating for you guys listening to this podcast is, when I started building my real estate business, I started investing a lot of money into my agents, buying them leads, giving them technology like CRM, and doing all this cool stuff to try to help them be super successful. And the way I relied on my agents to report their numbers, so I would understand where the holes were from a skills perspective, so I could help coach them, was using pen and paper. So we had this scorecard that tracked, your number of dials, your appointments, if you did an open house, closings, executions, etc. And so we had everybody, literally use a pen and paper every day. And then on Mondays, we would send out a report through Google Forms where they manually inputted it. And then we would, review the results. And on Monday, we would actually rank everybody based off those KPIs, and we assign certain points to the agents based off the KPIs. And like whoever was at the top of the list, they got dibs on like the best lead shifts. Like, like they got inbound leads coming in from the internet, radio, TV, all the stuff we do from a marketing perspective. And because we have like lead shifts throughout the week. So anyways, I like dreamed for years and years back in 2010, 11, 12 about like, having like some system that would display that information. And I started, some people, if you guys are listening to this, maybe some of you guys know this or you don't, but I didn't come from a technology background. Brian, I can't wait to hear you tell me about your, some of the companies you've been involved with. But, the thing I want to tell people is like, I used to think you needed an all-in-one like solution to run your business. And so I went down this path of like building out Salesforce, and like, I have no technical background at all, like sales and marketing, lead generation. That's what I love. And so, I hired an implementation company. This amazing salesperson at salesforce.com sold me all these licenses. And, basically almost 5 years later, I'm about $1 million deep into a Salesforce application. It's super sophisticated. It's super amazing. But what I learned, which could have saved me just an insane amount of money, could have saved me $1 million, was how important it is, to essentially go out and find like the best partners, that are very focused on very specific needs from a technology perspective in your business. So find the best partners and build an ecosystem of applications, and then get them to talk to one another using integration. So, that was my big epiphany from going through this, making this hellacious mistake. And so when I found out about Sisu, and I checked it out, and I had heard of these other software programs that would show you like reporting information about like what the agents were doing, but you had to manually input what the agents were doing, or you had to try to get your agents to put it in on their phone, like input their numbers on their phone, and like agents would never do it, like users.
Which is still 1,000 times better than tracking on paper, right?
Yeah, still 1,000 times better. But what's been awesome is, thanks to the integration RealSync.com created, connecting Boomtown to Sisu, it's totally automated now. All of those metrics, so that we can hold agents accountable, and most importantly, we know where to help coach them from a skills perspective. It's all on a dashboard, and it's amazing. And so I feel like I'm going off on a tangent here because I'm geeking out about how much I love Sisu. And by the way, if you guys are watching this, like, I'm not doing this podcast to try to like get affiliate money. I told Brian, like, I don't want any money from you guys. And in fact, Sisu does pay an affiliate commission if you refer somebody. And so if you guys, I think the code is Waters, type in WATTERS, Waters, I think is a code. If you give that to Sisu, you guys can have my affiliate discount. Because like, my thing is, I always want to be completely unbiased about anybody I make a recommendation to. And I think most of you guys probably know that about me by now. So let's dive into it. Brian, before we talk about Sisu, I kind of want to understand your past. You built up a company in the past that got offered over $300 million. I mean, there's very few people that have gone down that path. How did you go from an entrepreneur to building an enterprise, and what does that transition look like? What are the nuggets, like what are the 3 big secrets or nuggets you've picked up on to help make that transition from being a solopreneur to actually a CEO where you're overseeing versus overdoing?
Yeah. So my path is a little bit different than somebody in the real estate space, because somebody in the real estate space goes from being a great realtor to, how do I build a team? How do I build a brokerage? How do I really expand my business and become a leader, right? I think that's the real transition there, is how to become a leader instead of a realtor. In my position, I came from a background where I was in sales at MCI. Many of you probably don't know what MCI is, but MCI,
I know what MCI is.
MCI was the second largest basically telecommunications company in the United States after AT&T. Verizon ended up, WorldCom ended up buying them, going bankrupt, and then Verizon bought WorldCom. But anyway, while I was there, MCI happened to be the backbone of the internet. So when the internet was just coming out, I happened to be selling data. That's what I did for a living. And so it was all about applications on how to increase your efficiencies and really grow your business at a higher level. And so I worked directly with CEOs in that role. Absolutely loved it, but I was capped on my commissions, and being a 26-year-old at the time, I had no idea, how much value the multi-billion-dollar network brought to me, right? So I thought, hey, I'm going to go start my own telecommunications company. And so I did that. Actually became the first Nextel dealer, another name you haven't heard in a while, but the first Nextel dealer in Utah. And had a company that I only had for about 18 months, and we sold it. It wasn't a big sell, but we sold that business to a company that wanted to roll all kinds of technologies up for the multi-dwelling units, actually in Texas. And so anyway, after that, I was really excited about the internet and the capabilities of the internet. So I ended up starting a company called Talk2.com, which when the .com bubble blew up, it became Talk2 Technology. But Talk2, essentially, our focus there was empowering voice-enabled internet access. So the same stuff you do today with Siri and Alexa and Google, we were doing that 20 years ago. The difference was we were implanted in every wireless network, and we were turning the 2G telecommunication networks into 3G networks. So
I got to interrupt you on one quick thing. So I don't know if people have picked up on this, but like you started off in sales at MCI.
right.
So like, the theme of this podcast is CEO secrets, and something you can read about anywhere on Forbes or Fortune or any of these resources, Harvard Business Review, any of those places. They all talk about the vast majority of successful CEOs like learn the skills to be a great salesperson. So it sounds like you started off and you figured out how to be a great salesperson selling CEOs, and then you went down the entrepreneur route, started your own dealership selling Nextel, being a vendor for Nextel, and then you sold that.
That and long distance services, we did both.
Got it. Okay, and then so then you started this other company. You can keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So really the fact is I was just passionate about technology. I was passionate about changing the world and really making a difference. And I wanted to be the Steve Jobs of the world before Steve Jobs was that. So anyway, ended up going down this road. I was too young and dumb to believe people when they told me there's no way you can do that, right? You hear that all the time as an entrepreneur. It's usually those people who are closest to you that tell you you can't do something, and they think they're protecting you and watching out for you. So be cautious of those guys. So anyway, we ended up raising 43, doing a $43 million round after venture round after raising $5 million of private capital. And then ended up selling that business. That was about a 5-year run for me. So ended up selling that business in 2003.
Let me just re-say that one more time. So you raised $5 million in private money, and then raised an additional $43 million in venture capital money.
Correct.
And holy cow, that is amazing.
So it's like, so how do you?
This is like back in the late 90s, right?
Late 90s.
Holy cow.
We started it in 98, and I was 28 years old at the time. And as a 28-year-old, all I could do was go find some successful guy here in Utah who knew how to raise money, who knew how to build businesses, and he became my personal coach. And so every Friday I drove about an hour and a half to his house and spent all afternoon with him just being coached. And sometimes I would be there until 10, 11 o'clock at night.
So 2 nuggets you've given me so far is, one, master sales, which is, it's just a skill, right? Even if you're not like a super outgoing extroverted person, like sales is just skill. And the second thing is you talk about how important coaching is, and learn from somebody else that's a lot smarter than you than trying to go reinvent the wheel and it taking 100 years to figure it out.
Yeah, if I hadn't had a coach, that business would have never taken off like it did.
Awesome.
So anyway, here we were thinking we were going to change the world. We were 20 years ahead, I think, of where technology is today, right? And you have people migrating to voice today. But what ended up becoming super popular at that time was these devices that we all have. They got this huge screen on them, right? So this screen made it really easy to browse the web and to access the web from the device rather than doing it from voice. I remember year 2000, I was driving down the road, riding in the taxi in New York City, and asking it to pull up my email and to read me my emails and to reply to those emails. And I would reply through a WAV file to get driving directions, to get the weather, all the same kind of stuff we're doing today. But what ended up happening is the visual side of it took off before that side did. So even though that company was acquired, nothing really evolved with that technology, even though the business was acquired.
Got it. So fast forward, what happened after that?
So after that, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and jumped in, started another company that was completely unrelated called Drug Talk, that really was a prevention thing, more around giving back to families. And then after that, I had a neighbor who had been a headhunter and franchising forever. And I decided, rather than being in one business, I wanted to be in multiple businesses. So we started buying franchise companies. And really really companies that were maybe struggling a little bit and wanting to rebuild those businesses. And so the biggest company, the most successful company we acquired there was a company called Housemaster Home Inspections. They now have about 400 locations across North America. And then I ended up partnering with Budget Blinds and helped them grow and build and sell their business, which I was only there for a couple of years. And they sold their business about 5 years ago now.
So I actually hired Budget Blinds to do the shades in my house.
Okay. They're the best blind company in the world.
Yeah, you say they say Budget Blinds, but my blinds were very expensive.
Well, Budget Blinds started out as a blind company that would save you money, and then migrated into a company that was all about quality. Mm-hmm. But the rebranding of a company that everyone already knows is probably not something you want to do. So
yeah.
So anyway, they've stuck with the Budget Blinds for forever. But when Budget Blinds sold, my wife, being in real estate, asked me to come in and help her build her real estate business. And I did that for a couple of years, and that's how Sisu was born. So I went through those exact same pains, Chris, that you went through on, okay, how are we going to track this? How are we going to have agents input the data? How are we going to go from our daily to weekly to monthly and yearly data? How are we going to visualize this? And rather than paying $1 million to build a Salesforce platform, I went down the road of spending millions of dollars to build Sisu, to really allow the entire industry to have a platform that would manage their business for them and allow them to hold their team accountable and to lead their team. And the other things that it does.
Yep. Man, that's fascinating. So something interesting. So you were involved in franchising for a while, and something I'm curious. So first off, not a lot of people in real estate know this. Like when you think of franchising, you think of franchising as like being like a brand, right?
You think of McDonald's and Burger King.
Right. But like franchising is actually less, and we talked about this earlier. Franchising is less about the brand, and it's more about the operational systems they put in place to help you take the guesswork of how to build and scale your business, right? Is that
100%? Franchising is all about showing you the model and the systems to be able to build a business. And what I found, this was just me, I was not successful in doing food franchises, but loved doing home service businesses and business services. So if you look at the real estate brands that are in the world today, almost all of them are franchise businesses, right? They all sell franchises. And that's how they've gotten so big. So they all have these brokers across the country who are actually their franchisees. And a lot of us just may not look at it like that, but that's really what the industry is.
Let me ask you something. So so you're an outsider. You work with brokerages of all different brands, independent, like everybody. And I'm just kind of curious because you have some insight on the franchising side, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the real estate sector right now. Tens of billions of dollars being invested to try to disrupt real estate. And there's a publicly traded company called Realogy, right? And they've been taking a lot of hits from a stock price perspective. And, there's just massive competition right now for people trying to force disruption. And so I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like when you think about these big brands, like, for example, Realogy, they own Better Homes and Gardens, Sotheby's, Century 21, they bought
Coldwell Banker.
Yeah, they bought
etc.
Yep, they bought Barbara Corcoran's company. And so like most of those so like if you think about those brands, again, it's not about the brand, it's the operating systems. And so like when I studied all of those companies, it seemed like, the value proposition for most of those franchises the value proposition's been kind of getting weak over time, over the last decade. Like it's been getting weaker, because, it's just like the things they give their agents don't necessarily help them have more success. Like they're a bunch of shiny objects that don't actually help their agents have more success. I mean, that's my opinion. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, like what's the future you see for these franchise brands and like their ability to withstand the storm of disruption with like companies like Redfin, Open Door, who else? Compass, right? Raising what is $1 billion or something crazy. So like, how are these brands going to improve their value proposition, to help their agents have more success? Because I don't feel like, the agents are having any more success. I feel like they're struggling even more than ever before. But again, that's my biased opinion. I want to hear what you think.
So, I mean, I have a very strong opinion of that. Certainly, there's a lot of disruptors out there, right? And I think Zillow probably started that world of disruption. And this is just my perception. I mean, everyone probably has a different opinion of this, but from my view, what's happened here is these companies have come in and tried to disrupt the industry and have actually successfully disrupted the industry to an extent. However, I think for a long time, the focus was trying to eliminate the real estate agent. And I feel like it's now been proven that the real estate agent is not going away, right? So that was a big threat. You now have companies like Compass who are out there talking about their technology platform and how they do so much more. But the reality is they don't really have such a great technology platform, but they have a great messenger at the top. Their CEO does a great job of messaging that they do have that, right? So the market sees that, the market feels that, they're throwing money into it. Whereas Realogy actually happens to be by far and away the largest real estate company in the United States, with KW being in the second largest. But I don't think most people realize that. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize who Realogy is, right? They do recognize their brands, but they don't know the name Realogy. And so I think for them, it's just a matter of they still are doing more transactions. They still have more revenue than any other brand. It's really a matter of them figuring out what are the technologies that can continue to make them the industry leader, because they have the agents. Other people are trying to buy and recruit agents, and some of the model is changing. The way I see it is there are going to be far fewer agents in 5 years from now than there are today. But the ones who are around are going to make a lot more money. And I feel like they're going to make less money per transaction, but they're going to do a lot more transactions. Mm-hmm. So that's my opinion of where the industry is going. I see Realogy stock going back up at some point. I think it's just a matter of them getting the right technologies into play there and really messaging to the market so the market knows that they are, continuing to evolve and innovate rather than do things like what were being done 25 years ago.
Yeah, what's kind of fascinating is, again, I'm not connected to any of these big brands, but, Realogy, again, and then for you guys watching this, Realogy is a conglomerate that, like Brian said, they own all these brands. They've bought them all. And it's the largest real estate company in North America. I think 300,000 agents across all those brands. So they represent over 1 million transactions. I mean, that's a lot of momentum, like maybe things aren't going your way, but when you have that much momentum, like, you can pivot and figure it out. It's like, I'm sure they're going to come back with a vengeance once they figure it out. So yeah, it's interesting because the value props that the franchisor offers the franchisee is all about recruiting agents. Like again, even if the stuff doesn't, and this is just my opinion, which is super biased, but I feel like the shiny objects the franchisors give the franchisees is great for recruiting, but it doesn't actually help the agents have any more success. I'll tell you what though, like, man, if Realogy had y'all's software, Sisu, to help, coach agents, like that would probably help them.
Yeah, without a doubt. The coaching part of it, the managing your business part of it, managing your transactions, your commissions, all of that would be, that's what a lot of these, I've met with a lot of these technology companies. KW is promoting that they're building this huge platform, and I think they've come a long ways and are close to rolling out. I think they have rolled out their CRM, but still have a lot to develop there. You have Compass, who just acquired Contactually, right? They acquired Contactually so that they would have a software team to build out their technology platform.
Yep.
And now you have companies like Realogy just looking at, okay, what moves are we going to make here? And I'm sure they'll acquire some companies. I'm sure KW will acquire some companies.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them will end up with some great technology someday. So what's the point of them having technology? It's really, like you're saying, as a franchisor, to provide your franchisees with tools that are going to make them more successful, make them have more transactions, keep them in business, and not be threatened by other technology leaders.
So let me go off. I want to go off on a little bit of a different tangent here. So when you think about your career, and you've done some pretty amazing things, you started off from a sales perspective, doing really great at sales and driving revenue. So like, I think that's, anybody watching this is probably a no-brainer. If you're a solopreneur, like, you need revenue to hire people so that you can, leverage yourself and scale. Who were some, obviously for real estate, mortgage, title, it's different for everybody, but like, I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, like who are the key people for you early on when you transition from being the sales guy to being the leader of the organization? Who are those key, who are the top couple key people you bring in early to help you grow faster?
So, I mean, when I started there were 4 founders of that business. So I know if you talk to most venture capital companies, they'll say always have more than one founder, or maybe not necessarily always, but if you haven't built a business before, doing it on your own is very, very difficult, right? And you're never going to be able to get there on your own. You always have to surround yourself with people who can help you leverage, and people, in my opinion, I've always tried to surround myself with people who are actually better than I am in so many other areas, right? I call it equal but different talents. So if I can surround myself with people who are great in the sales and marketing, great in technology, great in the financial sector, then I have a well-rounded company that, can grow beyond what I could do on my own. So from a real estate perspective, I think it's very similar. It's really difficult to say, okay, I'm cranking out 60 to 100 transactions a year as an agent, and I'm ready to take that next move, and I want to build my own business. It's really difficult to stop the sales process yourself. I mean, those are your most profitable transactions, or the ones you do yourself. So it's really hard to step away from those and to really leverage and focus on training, which I know you're so good at, training people how to take that business to the next level. And I think that's the biggest concern, is how do I step away, and am I really committed to that? Is that really what I want? Am I willing to take less money for a year or two, possibly risk all of my money I've saved to build a business, right? I mean, that's the question. Is that something you really want to do?
So that you bring up such a great point, and I think every entrepreneur goes through this, because like you said, you got to sacrifice your net income for that long-term gain of potentially getting your life back at some point. So like mentally, how do you handle that? Like, how do you mitigate that in your mind when you're ready to start, sacrificing your personal income to hire others so you can level up? Like, what do you do? What do you go?
I mean, there are a lot of companies. I mean, most people in real estate, whether they're at KW or somewhere else, they've read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, right? Which talks about how to build a business. I'm guessing you've read that book.
Yeah, great book. My mom bought that book for me when I graduated college in 2006.
Okay.
And I've probably read it like half a dozen times. It's a great book.
Right. So that book, though, what it talks about is, as somebody in the real estate space, your goal is to where you're earning $1 million, right? And then your goal is to where you're netting $1 million. And so you're building a business. So as an agent, is that really what you want, right? Why do you want that? Is that really what you want? And I think that's the most important thing, is what's the reason? Is it because someone told you to do it? Is it because you're passionate about building a business? Is it because you're passionate about having a different life for your family than what you had growing up as a child? I mean, it's different for everybody. But for me, it's more about the why and the passion behind it. If you have those two things, go for it, right? But if you don't, because it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm hearing you right, it makes me think there's a lot of books out right now on emotional intelligence. And it makes me think like you got to be a little bit self-aware and you got to make a decision like, is this really what I want? Like, do I want the risk of having, multiple employees, salespeople, scaling up lead generation? Because the numbers just compound and get bigger and bigger and bigger because you got to drive revenue as you hire more people.
Right.
So if I hear you right, like, if somebody's in a position where they're kicking butt and taking names in whatever role they're in, if they want to level up, and level up can be different to everybody, but they want to level up into like running a business and being a CEO. They need to mentally like understand like, hey, your day-to-day activities are going to change.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing is people need to realize just because I'm a great real estate agent doesn't mean I'm going to be a great CEO. It doesn't mean I'm going to be a great leader. I can become that, but what do I need to do that? I need to start reading books about doing that. I need to go to conferences. I need to hire coaches. I need to do the things that great leaders do, right? So that's really the shift in becoming a person who's building a business versus, hey, I'm focused on selling houses and that's what I'm passionate about. I mean, it's very similar. I talk to so many people and hear from so many team leaders or brokerages, and there's so many people that get into the real estate industry because they love looking at homes, right? They love seeing homes. That's not the reason to be in the real estate industry, right? If you're a realtor, you're not selling homes as much as you're selling yourself. So you need to, if you're just going to think about becoming a real estate agent or a realtor and selling homes, it's really about selling yourself. So the same thing if you move into that entrepreneur that's now building a business, that's the same thing, right? You need to be able to recruit and attract agents. What makes you different? You need to build a culture. You need to be able to hold people accountable, how to motivate people, how to lead them and help them set their goals and make sure they're on track to hit those goals. And if you're not doing those things, you're likely not going to have a very successful business.
Let me ask you something. So like we have a bunch of different types of people watching this, people in mortgage, title, insurance, etc. I'm kind of curious, like you've seen you've been involved in different industries. You've got, I know you use your software specifically for mortgage, title, real estate brokerage. But like when you think about like the best like high level strategies to build revenue from a sales perspective, like any what's your opinion on like like what's the number one way in your mind, like outside of working your existing database, what's like the top tactical thing to really drive sales over the long term, not including your existing database and building your database? You can't use that one because everybody says that.
So everyone says that's number one, right? So I would say numbers 2 and 3 are going to vary depending on the person, depending on the individual. I mean, I know people who can make a living and make $1 million a year by focusing on selling expireds and FSBOs, and that's all they do. Right? But at the same time, there are others who could call them all day long and never do anything because it's not what they're passionate about. Those people should maybe be posting on social media, right? And I know a bunch of people who are making that much money by really driving their business based on social media. In addition to that, you have things that are changing in the industry right now, right? Where are you the one controlling your own leads? And if you can control your own leads, you're going to make a lot more money. That being said, I know a lot of people who are shifting over and they're doing the realtor.com or the Zillow solutions, where Zillow and realtor.com are now charging 30%, 35% by giving you a referral. So you're able to get business from those sources, and they're becoming the largest brokerages. Speaking of the change in the industry, in my opinion, those two companies are becoming the largest brokerages in the world because they know how to generate the leads. So really, Chris, you do some great things on lead gen with signs and radio and billboard, stuff like that.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, if you want to build a very sound business, ideally in a perfect world, you control your own lead generation strategy And then and then the other thing I'm hearing you say is like, have some self-awareness to try to figure out like what is something you could commit to 100% and like just give it hell and not give up and focus on that, because you can make a lot of money just focusing on that one thing.
Yeah, I mean, what's your talent, right? I really see people wanting to get leads from 15 sources. I think if you can focus in on 2 or 3 really, really well and own those, you'll likely have far more success.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Just out of curiosity, so, and I don't know if you can answer this because this is specifically about technology in the real estate industry, but so again, you're an outsider, you're not a real estate agent or real estate broker or mortgage lender or title person, like you're unbiased about this. So just curious, because you're a tech guy, what's the coolest piece of technology you're seeing out there? Obviously, besides Sisu, like what's something really cool you're seeing out there that's kind of newer to the industry?
Well, I'm so focused on Sisu, I'm not really seeing a ton of stuff other than things that we're integrating with, right? So I'm seeing all of the e-signature platforms like the Dot Loop, the DocuSign, SkySlope. Those are technologies that have completely changed the world, right? As far as the real estate world.
Yep.
And then you then have things like the MLS that changed the world for us. If you think about back to the days when my dad was in real estate and using a paper book that was this thick every month, a new book coming out, or every 6 months at one point.
Yep.
So, I mean, those alone are just huge innovations. Then you have all the CRMs that have come out. And now I think a lot of the hype that I'm hearing are more around things like the YLOPOs of the world who are generating additional leads, right? Again, it's about controlling your own leads. And so if you can figure out how to do that, some of those technologies, and I think that's why the CRMs took off as well, allowing you to generate leads from your website where you're now requiring people to sign in so that they can see more houses through that IDX feed. I think that's really been a game changer. So I think we're going to see over the next several years where that's going to go to a whole new level. And the people who are willing to spend the money and who know and track those ROIs, which is why Sisu exists, right? You track your ROIs, you know where your best leads, your most profitable leads are coming from. Those are the people who are going to withstand the challenge of all this disruption and be the agents who are able to take advantage of the technology, or the business owners who are able to take advantage of the technology, who are willing to spend the extra $10 to make $100, right? So many people, they think, hey, I need to cut my costs. Well, you need to cut your costs where you're not making money or that aren't helping you manage your business. But the things that are making you more efficient and driving those efficiencies, you need to invest more money in those because they're actually creating more money.
Yeah, so kind of interesting, 2 things you brought up. One is my favorite report in Sisu is the financial report that tells me what my return on investment is from each lead source. So we plug in, what we spend on that ad campaign, and then we compare it to our number of closings. And so that without a doubt is one of my favorite reports because it helps me know where should I be spending more or less. And those numbers, the amount are being spent are so much larger than anything else I could ever cut.
Well, if you don't know that, how do you make that decision? Is it just something you go with your gut?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I'll tell people what I used to do. So we had an inside sales team that would, ask the person on the phone how they heard about us. We used a call tracking system. So there's one called callrail.com. And we would assign vanity phone numbers to all of these different campaigns to track inbound leads. And then we built unique landing pages for every campaign. And then and that worked for a while, but what happened after like 5 or 6 years after people started really knowing who we were is like people would call in and they would reference multiple campaigns. And you're like, man, how do I track this now? And then I ended up with like 30 trackable phone numbers, like 50 websites. It was just absolutely, just outrageous trying to track stuff. So I like how it's all condensed in that one report in Sisu. I want to divert and go in another direction now. And it's something you brought up earlier, and we were talking about a little bit earlier around, to make that transition from, being a solopreneur trying to drive revenue to owning a business and being a CEO. You talked about people having hire people to help you grow. Tell me, like, so you've had some great coaching in the past, and you've probably gone through a lot of ups and downs when it comes to recruiting talent and selecting talent. What does that process look like for you? Because, I mean, I've hired leadership coaches, and they said 80% of your success is predicated on your ability to recruit and select the right people. So what's the process you go down to make sure you're hiring the best of the best?
So are you talking about real estate or any business in general?
I'm looking for like general advice for anybody trying to go from solopreneur to CEO, building a team. Like what are the key nuggets they need to know to make sure they do a great job recruiting and selecting talent, so they have less fear that they're going to be taking this sacrifice from a net income perspective.
Yeah.
And these people they surround themselves with are eventually going to help them, level up. So like, what are your top nuggets around recruiting and selecting talent?
Okay. Well, first, in my opinion, the most important thing is you've got to figure out what differentiates you. So what makes your business different? What's the culture of your business, right? So if somebody comes into your business, what are you providing them? What makes you different? And then what is your culture? You want to make sure you have a culture that drives engagement, excitement, accountability, that helps them achieve their goals so that they stick around. In real estate, there's so much turnover. I think mortgage has a lot of the same, not quite to the same extent, but there's a lot of people jumping around. I think that's why. So then the shift in becoming from a real estate agent to a business owner, just like when I'm in real estate, I need to time block and spend 3 hours every morning talking to people, right? So I can sell houses. It's the same thing. If you really want to build a business, are you time blocking and spending time recruiting agents, right? How many people are you talking to every day? Is it something you really want to do? Are you happy to have 5 agents, or do you really want to build a team that's 20 agents or 50 agents? Because you're only going to get what you decide to get, right? If you decide you're going to get to 25 agents, you're going to put a plan in place, and you're going to reverse engineer it, hopefully, and say, this is how many people I need to contact. This is how many conversations I need to have. This is how many meetings I need to have. Same stuff that we do in Sisu on the real estate side, we also do on the recruiting side. And I just think it's important that people focus on recruiting and really driving that business that way. You now become focused on recruiting, training, and retaining, right? Rather than focused on selling houses. And so there's a big shift there. But how do you recruit that? Well, really, you focus on it, right? I think that's anything in business. If you focus on it, you're going to get it. What you focus on expands. If you're not focused on it, your agents aren't just going to show up. They're not just going to come in your doors. You may have a couple of agents do that because some of your agents tell people about you, but otherwise you're not going to grow a real business by doing that.
So the thing I'm hearing you talk about is something I talk about is the talent funnel. Like lots of people like to talk about the lead generation funnel. Like you got all the leads at the top. So if I'm hearing you right, basically fill up the funnel at the top by applying massive effort at booking as many appointments as possible with potential candidates and get in front of as many people as possible. And then when you're in front of those candidates, what do you do? What's your process when you actually, talk to them on the phone or get face-to-face? What are you doing to vet them out?
You're asking me what I'm doing to vet them out?
And I get you're in tech, so I want to know from your perspective, what do you do for Sisu to vet people out?
So for me, the most important thing I look for is, number one, are they going to be a culture fit? Do they fit our culture? Because I don't want somebody in my business that doesn't fit our culture, because they can take away from your business more than add to your business. And then, there was something else I was going to talk about. As far as second fit, I just lost where I was going. Oh, it's really around their passion, right? So if I have somebody come in that I feel like I'm going to have to ride them, I'm going to have to be on top of them, and they don't have the motivation, I want somebody who feels that this business is important to them as it is to me. And that's really hard to find. That's probably the most most difficult thing to find, and it'll probably never be as important to them as it is to me. But I want to make sure that the passion is there, and that they're going to be a self-starter and they're going to go drive. I don't want to have to ride somebody as a leader. So for me, those are the two most important things.
So let me ask you this. So like, I kind of understand from an interview process, you're looking for people that, you know, I mean, in a sense, basically make you feel a certain way, right? Like it's a feeling you get when you're with them, right? Because that's ultimately the root of culture, is like how other people feel in the organization about one another. So like once you actually get them on the bus and like they're on the team, like tell me, like once they're taking action, what are you looking for in the first 30 days, the second month, the third month, just to like validate that you made the right decision? You know, like what are those things you're looking for in the first 90 days? Because I had a leadership coach tell me one thing, like you got to think about your business kind of like a flower bed, and you got to pull the weeds out, the ones that aren't a good fit, really quickly before it takes over the whole flower bed. So like what are the milestones? What are the things you're looking for once they actually join the organization, like month 1, 2, 3, et cetera?
So I learned something about, well, probably 12 years ago. And somebody told me that adrenaline can create two things. And adrenaline, we have that in a lot of cases, but we usually have adrenaline when we start a new career, right? There's a lot of adrenaline. If it comes into our heart, then it becomes fun. And if it goes to our head, then it becomes fear. So when I look at that, if I'm looking at the real estate or mortgage world, it's all about the 4 disciplines of execution. You hear about that all the time in this industry. So those lead measures, those activities that are going to create success, are those happening? To me, that's the most important thing. Are they doing the activities that are going to create success? Because as long as they're not afraid and are actually making the contacts, they're people you want in your organization. They're passionate. But if they're not doing those activities, you probably don't want them in your business, because they will ruin your culture.
So if I'm deciphering what you're saying, basically you're paying attention to how much action they take when they join the organization. And if they aren't taking a lot of action and you feel like it's pushing a boulder at Mount Everest, then you know you need to cut the cord.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about fear. You've got to get people to overcome their fears, right? I mean, I don't care if someone goes on 10 listing appointments and doesn't get any. I would rather that than they go on one listing appointment and get one, right? Because if they go on one listing appointment and get one, what they're probably doing is they're selling a family member. But if they go on 10 listing appointments, don't get any, they're out prospecting and doing the things that need to be done. Now I just need to train them. Okay, here's how you're going to close once you go in. Here's maybe a pre-listing packet. Here's what you do before you go in. You know, so you can, those are things that can be trained, but what can't be trained is the passion, the drive, and really taking action.
That's great, man. I love that. I'll be honest. One of the mistakes I made early on is I think it's easy to get in your ego. Like you meet somebody and you're just like feeling on fire about them, and then they join the organization and like they're not taking massive action, but like you just want to force them to be successful, and it just looks like you're pushing that boulder, you know, up Mount Everest. And like you got to check yourself and be like, man, if I want more success for them than they want for themselves, this is probably not a good fit.
Yeah, and you probably always want more success though than they want for themselves, right? I mean, there's so many people that are happy with 2 transactions a month. You would never settle for 2 transactions a month.
True.
So I think that's part of it too, is you need to recognize what their goals are, and I would actually ask them what they want to accomplish before you hire them in your organization, so you can see if they are a fit, right? Because some people don't want that in their organization. I think another thing to look for there is their resourcefulness, right? So many people will come to you for everything, right? Which you want them to. You have systems in place so that they can leverage that. But at the same time, people who are resourceful figure things out. And those are the kinds of people, especially in my business, those are the kinds of people I want in my business, because we have so much to accomplish. If there's something that needs to happen, I just want people to take action and make it happen. I don't want them to come to me for everything.
So I want to wrap this up, and you mentioned a great book called Four Disciplines of Execution. One of those disciplines is have a compelling scoreboard, which is what Sisu is all about. But I'm curious, what are you reading, Brian? Like, what books are you reading right now, and what's what's the best book you've read the past year? What's got you excited?
So the book I'm reading right now is Winner's Dream by Bill McDermott. If you guys don't know who he is, he's now the CEO of SAP, one of the largest software companies in the world. They just spent $8 billion to acquire Qualtrics, which is a Utah company. And if you really want to learn how to build a sales organization, I highly, highly recommend this book. He started out at Xerox, then moved into the software industry, going to Siebel Systems. And anyway, it's been a great book for me. I spend most of my time in business books. Another one that I loved was Shoe Dog, which was from the founder of Nike. And then
I've heard about that one. I haven't read it yet. So Winner's Dream and Shoe Dog.
Yeah, those are both great books. And then one that I've read many times is Be Obsessed or Be Average by Grant Cardone. For anyone in the real estate industry, I really recommend that book because it's just really getting you to overcome your fears. I think it does a great job of that.
You know what's interesting is SAP, right? Like not hardly anybody like in real estate knows what the heck SAP is.
Yeah.
But SAP is like, God, how big are they? They're like, man, I don't know, how many billions of dollars do they do? They're a juggernaut.
Well, after Salesforce, I believe they're the largest software company in the world today. But
as you were talking, I was like Googling this because I was trying to figure out how much. I mean, that's it. They're a behemoth,
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, man. I'm gonna research. I'm gonna look that book up. Winner's Dream.
Right.
And the one written by the Nike guys. So cool.
Man,
I wanted to wrap up on that, but I got to ask you one last question because you're a tech guy. So my understanding is SAP, it's an all-in-one solution for people that are in the manufacturing and like product business, right? It's an all-in-one solution. Like you can operate your whole business off of it. And then you have, applications that integrate to it. Is that accurate?
I know they started out with CRM being one of their platforms, but they have many platforms, right? So you're right, but at the same time, I'm not in their business. I don't know what all industries they're in. They just acquired Qualtrics, which does surveys so that you can understand your customers better, right?
So SAP. So I think for anybody watching this, I hope one takeaway they can have, and this is something I've just pieced together, and maybe you can validate this for me. But in technology, it seems like there's basically two different philosophies like a CTO will go down. And one of those philosophies is like, go build everything ourselves and have an all-in-one solution, right? Which is kind of what Keller Williams is trying to do, right? And SAP, which serves a totally, like, they don't even work in real estate. They're like manufacturing, product, et cetera. But like, that's what they did, right? And like, they're like this multi-billion-dollar juggernaut. So anyways, that's one philosophy, all in one. And then the other philosophy is you have an ecosystem of applications. And then like, for example, if you're in sales, your CRM is a core business. And then you have these really cool applications that connect to it and integrate to it. And that's how you have a cohesive technology stack. And so, is my thinking right there? Like those are the two basic philosophies people are going to go down.
So I really look at it a lot different than that, Chris, in that SAP, Microsoft, right? Salesforce, all of these massive technology companies, they built a technology platform for specific industries, and they went out and focused on those industries. When I look at KW is a real estate company focused on real estate. They are building their technology. However, they're not a technology company. They're they're a real estate company, right? So how much time and effort and money should they really be spending on building their own technologies? And I'm not here to say they're doing the right or wrong thing, but I just ask the question versus going out and finding somebody that's already doing that they can buy or lease that, right? So when I look at somebody like an SAP, I view them as focusing on building a solution for an industry or industries, whereas KW is focused on building a solution for their own business. So I think there's a huge difference in that. And the thing that I've seen in my experience in the last 20 plus years in the software industry is usually when people try to build their own, they're focused on building something to get to a point where this is the solution they want today. And by the time they get there 3 years down the road, the solution they wanted then is not necessarily the solution they want today. And so they find themselves having to continue to innovate to try to keep their people happy using that platform. And usually, I just haven't seen a ton of success in trying to get your people to use your software that may be 2 or 3 years behind all the competition.
So people watching this right now, and this is the last thing before we close out. If you're watching this right now and you're in mortgage, title, insurance, brokerage, real estate, whatever, and you're trying to build a business. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you should go out and buy or rent the software you need, and do not try to go create it or recreate it on your own.
Well, let me ask you, Chris, you didn't completely create your own software, but how much did you say you spent on Salesforce?
I'm very, you know what, like for anybody that's read our book, right? Like I talked about all the things I screwed up. So like, I'm very transparent, and I just like, I don't know, like I like other people to hear somebody else from technology say, don't do that. Cause like, God, I hope people are listening to this, and I like pray that they do not make the mistake I did and like think because a solution doesn't exist, you need to go create it. And like, we all have that in us, like as entrepreneurs, like you want to go out and like create something that doesn't exist. But like, man, it's like you're starting a whole new business. And, we started the conversation today talking about Gary Keller's book, speaking of KW, the real estate team. And he wrote that book, The One Thing, right? And it's like, focus on one thing, don't get scattered doing a lot of different things, which is kind of ironic, right? Because he's trying to be a technology company and a brokerage. So I don't know if he's taking his own advice.
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't think a lot of people want to bet against Gary Keller because he's proven
a smart dude, man.
Right? So at the same time, he has a business. I don't know how many agents they have. I think it's 130,000, but that's, you never know for sure the way people report out their agents. So let's just say he has 130,000 agents. Well, if those agents leave, he no longer has a business, right? So he's doing everything he can to try to protect those agents today by building software, by building a mortgage company where they're going to discount the mortgage. Instead of discounting the real estate like everyone else is doing, they're discounting the mortgage so that they can provide the same overall benefits to the consumer, right? And so,
smart.
So anyway, he's got a strategy. I think he's doing a lot of smart things. I just think he could get there a lot faster by partnering with the right people and getting there.
Cool. Brian, thanks so much for being on CEO Secrets. I've learned a ton. I took a lot of notes. I got 2 good books I'm going to go buy. And again, anybody watching this or listening to it on iTunes or YouTube or wherever, I think my affiliate code is WATTERS, WATTERS. And if you give that to the Sisu team, they'll give you the affiliate revenue. I think it's 20%. So you get a 20% discount for the lifetime of your account. Is that right, Brian?
That's right. And if for some reason it's not WATTERS, we will add WATTERS to it. So I think that's right, though.
Cool. And then for those of you guys either listening in or watching, you guys can go get a free copy of my book, The $1 Million Real Estate Team. And I share all my blunders of all the things I screwed up along the way. We did a couple things right, but definitely screwed up a ton. So you can get a free copy at $1millionrealestateteam.com. And tune into the next podcast. Thanks so much for being on, Brian.
Chris, great catching up with you. Thank you.
All right, man. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you.